Hey everyone, this is Mason with FilterGrade. In this video, we're going to learn all about exporting video in Premiere Pro. As you probably know, a Premiere Pro project file will only play in Premiere and doesn't work on its own. You need to render effects and edits into a playable format, but the format and options you choose will depend heavily on your exact needs, and it can be a bit intimidating. And what do all those other options do anyways? So, to export a project in its current state, make sure you have the correct timeline selected. Then click File, Export, or on keyboard you can press Ctrl-M on Windows or Command-M on Mac. Then select Export Media. From here, you will be greeted with a lot of options. The first option is perhaps the most intimidating, and that is to select the format you want to export as. When in doubt, choose H.264. This will export your video as an MP4 file, which is a versatile format that has the best of both worlds. Its compression gives it a small file size for optimal storage, while still maintaining a very high level of quality when playing back the file. If you're uploading to YouTube or just want to make videos that you can play back on any device while taking up minimal space, this is probably the format you'll want to choose. Depending on what platforms you're making videos for, you may only ever use H.264. If you need to use another format, you'll probably know it. Since MP4 with the H.264 codec works for basically everything, you will likely only need a different format if the person or platform asking for the footage specifies a format. Now below Format is Preset. Presets can define the settings that are found at the bottom of the export dialog box that you can tweak later. In general, the default preset chosen for you is fine, although you can create or import your own if you need to. If you chose H.264 as your format, then selecting Match Source Adaptive High Bitrate will be the most ideal compromise between size and quality. A specific scenario could call for a different preset, but again, you'll probably know it if you need it. For a straightforward video export, you won't need to mess with this at all. There are several presets for different social media platforms as well. In general, you can upload any H.264 video to any platform, but if you want to take the extra time to export different versions with optimal settings for each platform, Premiere does make that very easy to do. Next, you will notice your file name with the format appended to the end. Even if the file name is already what you want it to be, it's a good idea to click on the blue highlighted text which will open File Explorer. You can navigate to the location you wish to save in, as well as change the name of the file from here. Below that are checkboxes asking if you want to export video and audio. In most cases, you probably want to export both, but if you don't need audio, for example, you can uncheck that box now. Next is Effects Settings. You can add things like LUTs, which you could have added during your main edit. However, there are other useful add-ons here. You can add an image overlay, a timecode overlay, and a name overlay. These are great options for test cuts of films or to add a watermark of some kind. For the rest of the export settings, you should be fairly good to go if you have set your project settings to be the same as what you intend to export. If you want to make a change to something, uncheck the box next to it. If you are editing in 4K resolution and only want to export in high definition, for example, you can manually adjust the export resolution to be 1920 by 1080. By default, the values are linked, so changing one dimension will scale the other one accordingly. Other things like frame rate will be automatically linked to your project settings, but if for some reason you wish to change this, like exporting in 30 frames when your project is in 60, you can specify that here. If you do intend to export in a different frame rate than the project itself, there is a good setting farther down that will help you out. Near the bottom of the dialog box, you'll find a Time Interpolation drop-down menu. Frame sampling, frame blending, and optical flow will result in increased smoothing respectively when subtracting or adding frames, resulting in a better looking final product that doesn't have as much jerkiness that may be caused by frames being removed. The better the method, the longer the export, of course, so choose optical flow for the best results, but a very long export time. The next potentially confusing setting is Render at Maximum Bit Depth. By default, with this unchecked, Premiere Pro will render everything at an 8-bit color depth, and in most cases this is just fine. Most cameras record in 8-bit color and many effects are in 8-bit color. But some cameras record at a higher depth and some effects have 32-bit depth, which will be indicated by a 32 symbol next to the effect. If you don't have a need for it, then don't bother checking it, because it will heavily increase your render times with no actual effect on your video. The only other setting you might want to adjust is Bitrate Encoding. Bitrate is how many bits per second the file will play at. The larger the number, the more true to original quality, generally speaking. The options are CBR, VBR 1-pass, and VBR 2-pass. CBR stands for constant bitrate and will result in a larger file size. The other downside is that if you set bitrate then lower than the optimal amount for certain scenes that you're rendering, you may see a reduction in quality overall. It's most useful if you need to stream something at a limited bitrate. VBR, or variable bitrate, will adjust the bitrate as needed, using a higher bitrate on complex scenes and a more efficient bitrate on simpler scenes. This results in a more efficiently compressed and thus smaller file. But how do you choose between 1-pass or 2-pass? 1-pass will be fine for most situations, but 2-pass will give you a better end product. 2-pass VBR, as the name suggests, has 2 passes. The first pass analyzes your video and figures out where and how to compress. The second pass actually applies the compression. As you can imagine, this will greatly increase your render time over 1-pass VBR, so it's not always worth it, but if you have the time, it's definitely recommended. And if bitrate doesn't mean anything to you, just don't mess with it. The preset you choose has probably picked a good number. You can feel free to increase it, but you shouldn't go lower than 8 to preserve maximum quality. For the audio section, you can adjust your bit rates higher if you'd like, but if you choose a high quality format, you won't need to mess with this at all, as it will already be quite high. The rest of the settings are all specific to special situations, and you will likely never have to use them. Basically, if you don't know what it is, it's probably best to leave it alone, unless a project you're working on specifically calls for it. If you're ever unsure about what a specific setting does, you can always create a short clip and export it with that setting. Find out what they actually do, and compare to others. Lastly, before exporting, you can choose to export directly to a social media or video upload account in the Publish tab. You'll need to log in, and you can add any text or titles to the social media post from there. One last note about exporting is whether to select Queue or Export when you're ready. You may be tempted just to click Export, after all, that's what you came here to do. But that will immediately start exporting and will use Premiere Pro to do the exporting. But if you click on Queue, that will trigger Adobe Media Encoder to open. Media Encoder allows you to queue up multiple projects for export, and they will all run in sequence. Meanwhile, you can continue using Premiere Pro to work on another project. Choose this option if you want to be able to edit in Premiere while you're exporting. I hope very much that this helps you understand exporting in Premiere Pro. While there are limitless options on how to export a video, most of the time you'll find yourself tweaking none of the options. As with most features of Adobe programs, the Premiere Export tool is designed with every possibility in mind, while the general use case is quite simple. Stay calm and don't be overwhelmed. Let us know in the comments below if you have any questions about exporting video in Premiere Pro, and we'll see you in the next video. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. And if you're looking for professional LUTs, Lightroom desktop and mobile presets, Premiere Pro templates, and more photo and video education, visit FilterGrade.com today.